Hello friends and welcome to StudyIQ. I am Joycey Joy and today in this lecture we will discuss about the recent speech made by the Finance Minister on Indian economy. So recently the Finance Minister has made a speech which give a direction or a indication that there will be better economic growth rate in the coming days in the Indian economy. So the Finance Minister's speech was a booster for the economy. So we will be discussing about the highlights of the speech made by the Finance Minister on Indian economy recently. So now let us first look into what was the purpose of the speech. So if we look at the rationale of the speech made by the Finance Minister, we will see that in the Union Budget, when the Finance Minister made the Union Budget 2019, so in the Union Budget certain statements were controversial. So after the Union Budget was released in the month of February, there are indications of an economic slowdown in the economy. So the speech that was recently given by the Finance Minister is a booster for the economy. That is, it will pick up the growth rates in the economy and the investor confidence in the Indian economy. So in this context, let us see what are the highlights of the speech made by the Finance Minister. Now let's come to the highlights. The first one was regarding cheaper loans. So Finance Minister announced that the banks will make home loans, automobile loans, etc. much cheaper. Now we need to understand two things in this regard. The first one is regarding the monetary policy of RBI. So monetary policy is made by the Monetary Policy Committee. Now the Monetary Policy Committee decides about the benchmark interest rates in the economy. Now you know that the purchase of loans, whether it is home loans or automobile loans, will all depend on the interest rates. When the interest rates is less, more people will avail loans. When the interest rate is high, lesser people will take loans from the banks. So first factor that will influence the loans that are availed by the customers would be the interest rate. Now when we talk about the monetary policy in Indian economy, for the 4 consecutive times, that is in the last 8 months almost, the RBI under the Monetary Policy Committee has decided to decrease or bring down the interest rates. So already the Monetary Policy Authority, the RBI, has adopted an expansionary policy in order to bring down the interest rates in the economy and thereby boost the economic growth. Now on the top of it, now the Finance Minister has also announced that the banks are to provide home loans and automobile loans at a lesser rate of interest. The loans will become cheaper. So this is an indication that the government, that is the fiscal authority, and the monetary authority, that is the RBI, has adopted an expansionary policy, that is to expand the money supply in the economy. Now second factor which is very important here is that this will raise the aggregate demand in the economy. This is because when the money supply increases, the purchasing power of the people increases. So this will raise the overall demand in the Indian economy. So this is the second indication. So by increasing the demand, the consumption will increase, thereby the economic growth rates also will increase. So when consumption increases, supply increases, that means output increases, therefore the economic growth rate will also increase. So this is the second indication. Now, second one is regarding tax notices. The Finance Minister made a statement that all the tax notices will be issued from a centralized system and the old tax notices will be decided by October 1st. Now the third one is regarding FPI surcharges. Now what is meant by FPI? FPI is foreign portfolio investment. Now the Finance Minister in the budget speech has made an announcement that the FPIs will be charged a surcharge. Now what is meant by a surcharge? Surcharge is a tax on tax. So an additional tax that has to be given on a larger amount of tax that is paid. That is called surcharge. So in the budget, an announcement was made regarding charging of surcharges from the FPI investors. Now in the speech that was recently made by the Finance Minister, the Finance Minister said that the surcharges that will be charged on foreign portfolio investments will be withdrawn. So this is because After the Union Budget 2019 was presented in the Parliament, when the Finance Minister made a statement that surcharges will be charged on the foreign portfolio investors, we have seen there was an outflow of foreign portfolio investment from Indian economy. So in this context, it was evident that the investments, especially the foreign investment from India, was taking a downward trend. There was an outflow instead of an inflow. So this seriously impacted the investments, especially the foreign investment. In this context, the third announcement was regarding the removal or the withdrawal of the FPI, that is foreign portfolio investors surcharges in Indian economy. So this was the third highlight. Now the fourth one was regarding angel taxation. So announcement was that the angel taxes on the startups will be withdrawn. Now we need to understand what is an angel tax. An angel tax is the tax that is charged on the capital or the investment used in order to start a startup. You know that when startups are coming up, there is a lack of investment for the startups. So a startup starts with an idea. So this idea needs to be financed. Capital has to be raised. So how will the startups raise capital? Startups will be looking at investors who will be ready to invest on the idea of their startup. So basically, the investor who is willing to provide capital or investment to the startup is known as an angel investor. So recently, the government had decided that startups would be charged taxes, or the angel taxes will be charged on the capital that is used by the startups. Now with this, the startups were finding it difficult to find investment for their startups. So this had affected the investment environment in the country. So now the finance minister has made an announcement that there will be no angel taxation for the startups. That is, for the initial capital the startups require, there will be no taxes charged. So this will help in boosting the investor confidence, and also this will improve the investment in the Indian economy. Now fifth one is CSR or corporate social responsibility. Now the announcement was that non-compliance with the CSR by the companies will be decriminalized. It means that if a company does not adhere to the CSR norms or the corporate social responsibility norms, no criminal action will be taken against the company. So it will be decriminalized. So these are some of the highlights. Now most importantly, the government has decided, or the finance ministry has decided, to infuse more capital into the public sector banks. Now there are many reasons for it. First reason is the increasing NPAs in the public sector banks. We have seen that 11 public sector banks were put under the prompt corrective action framework of the RBI. Now, prompt corrective action framework of the RBI is a corrective action framework where the banks, depending on three criteria, if the banks fail to fulfill three criteria, they will be put under the prompt corrective action of the RBI. So first criteria is NPA. So if the NPA threshold of bank exceeds a certain limit, then RBI can put the banks into the PCA. Second one is ROA, or return on assets. So if the return on assets for the banks is lesser than a particular percentage, again prompt corrective action can be invoked by RBI. Now the third one is CRAR, or capital to risk weighted assets ratio. And now if the CRAR also falls lesser than a threshold, then PCA can be invoked. So based on these conditions, almost 11 public sector banks were put under the prompt corrective action framework of RBI last year, and 2-3 banks came out of the PCA. This was because of the capital infusion. So basically what happens is that the NPA, or the non-performing asset of the banks, especially the public sector banks, are very high. So this will impact the effectiveness and the performance of the public sector banks. So the public sector banks are owned by the government. Therefore, it's the responsibility of the government to take out the public sector banks from the crisis of NPAs. So first reason for capital infusion is to bring the banks out of the NPA crisis, or the non-performing asset crisis. Second one is to expand the credit facilities of the bank. So when more capital is infused into the banks will be able to provide more credit to the public. So money supply in the economy will increase, therefore investments will also increase. So this is the second rationale. Now these are the reasons why the government has decided to infuse more capital into the public sector banks. Now the next decision or the highlight of the speech made by the finance minister was regarding the rate cuts. So banks have decided, especially the public sector banks, have decided to pass on the rate cuts by the RBI to the borrowers. Now we need to understand how does this happen. Now we have seen that the Monetary Policy Committee or the MPC is responsible for framing monetary policy in the economy. Now what happens under a monetary policy? Under a monetary policy, the threshold or the benchmark interest rates are decided. So MPC decides the benchmark interest rates, which is called the repo rates. So when the interest rate comes down, this will be passed on to the banks. Now, what is repo rate? We need to understand that. This is because repo rate acts as the benchmark interest rate. Now, repo rate is the rate at which the RBI will provide loans to the banks. So, RBI provides loans to the banks at a particular rate of interest, and this is called repo rate. Now, when the repo rate comes down, it means that the banks can avail cheaper credit from RBI now. And when the repo rate increases, it means that loans become expensive for the banks. Now, for the last 4 monetary policy reviews, MPR or the monetary policy reviews, RBI has decided to cut down the repo rate. So it means that now banks will get cheaper credit from RBI. But that is not just enough. Banks will get cheaper credit by reducing the repo rate. But this benefit has to be passed on to the customers. So this has to be done by the commercial banks. So commercial banks can be either private sector banks, it can be public sector banks, or it can be foreign banks. So in case of public sector banks which are owned by the government has decided that the benefits of the rate cut will be passed on to the customers. So it means in effect, the public sector banks will cut down the interest rate that they charge for the loans. So your housing loan interest will come down, your automobile or car loan interest will come down, your personal loan interest will come down. So this is how the customers will feel the rate cut. So now the finance minister has announced that the benefits of the rate cut will be passed on to the customers. That means the public sector banks are going to reduce the interest rates on various loans that they provide. So these are the highlights of the finance minister's speech. Now, overall, we can say that all the points that was highlighted in the speech of the finance minister was targeted in 2 things. One is to boost the investment. Second one is to increase the consumption rate in the economy. So these 2 things can be done by increasing the money supply in the economy. So this is the target of the government. Increase investment rates and the consumption rates. Thereby output will increase and also the GDP or the economic growth rate will increase. So this is the overall understanding that you should have from the finance minister's speech. Now let us come to the issues that are addressed by the finance minister's announcements. First issue that is addressed is the growth slowdown in the economy. This is done by reviving the investment and the consumption demands in the economy. Now, secondly, certain controversial proposals are addressed. First one is regarding the CSR. So, decriminalization of CSR. Now, second one is regarding the angel taxation. Third one is regarding the removal of surcharges from foreign portfolio investors. These were all some of the controversial proposals that the finance minister had made in the Union Budget of 2019. So these controversial proposals are withdrawn. So this is the second issue that is addressed. Now thirdly, these highlights of the finance minister's speech will improve the ease of doing business in India. So investor environment will improve. Therefore, the doing business will become easier in India. Now, fourth issue that is addressed is regarding the aggregate demand. By increasing the money supply, by focusing on expansionary policy, the aggregate demand can be increased. So consumption will increase, thereby supply will increase, and thereby the economic growth rates will also increase. So fifth one is regarding lending. So regarding lending also, the finance minister's speech highlights an expansionary policy. That is, banks have decided, or the government has decided, to ask the banks to pass on the benefits of the rate cut to its customers. So this will expand the lending in the economy. Now fifth one is MSME. So concerns regarding MSMEs will be addressed, and also the startups. Now the FPI, or the foreign portfolio investments. So the major issue was regarding the surcharge that was announced in the union budget. By withdrawing the surcharge, the investments will again come back to Indian economy. In the last few months, we have seen there was an outflow of investments from foreign investors. So these are all some of the issues that are addressed by the finance minister's speech, which was made recently. Hope these measures will revive investment and consumption in the economy, and thereby the growth rates of the economy will come back to normal. You can find the PDF of this lecture on our website www.studyiq.com. You can follow my Facebook page for more video updates. You can write to me at joycey.studyiq@gmail.com for any of your queries and clarifications. Thank you.